everyone, it's Heath with the Music Technology Teacher Network, www.mutechteachernet.com. If you watched the first part of the video about the history of electronic instruments and MIDI, and you decided to come back and watch part 2, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this next part. Where actually now I'm going to start talking about actual MIDI controllers and how the design of the MIDI protocol language impacts how we work with that in the DAW. So I hope you enjoy it. Again, if you do, it would be awesome if you would click that subscribe button, tell your colleagues and your friends about it, spread the word, and I'll do my best to keep putting out some content that you guys can use. Enjoy. Computer. So when you press a key on a MIDI controller, what information is it sending? Well, first of all, keep in mind it has 128 different values that it can send to the computer, which means think of the values as being the keys on a piano. So a standard piano has 88 keys. Well, a MIDI piano is capable of playing 128 keys or 128 different pitches of a single instrument. Now, there are going to be times when we're playing like maybe, say, a drum set. Well, I don't know of any drum set in the world that has 128 different sounds or different instruments. So you don't always have to use all 128 of those MIDI keys. But when you're using tonal instruments or melodic instruments, really and truly, the MIDI keyboard allows you to choose a range of 128 pitches that can be generated by the computer. So the first bit of information is what sound or what pitch do you want the computer to generate. So as you're looking at the piano roll in any DAW, you'll see a MIDI keyboard vertically, usually on the left side of the piano roll. If you go all the way down to the lowest pitch, that's going to be C-2. And that pitch is going to be assigned as 0 in that 128 different messages that can be sent via MIDI. And each of the different keyboard keys on that piano roll keyboard is going to be assigned a different number. So for example, C3 or middle C is going to be the MIDI value of 60. G8, which would be the very top note of the MIDI keyboard, is 127. And so all the pitches in between are going to be numbered sequentially from 0 all the way up to 127. Now, the second piece of information that the MIDI keyboard is going to send to the computer is sort of like a light switch. If you flip the light switch, you turn it on, you flip it again, you turn it off. So the MIDI controller is going to capture the exact moment that you press or play the key or the pad on the MIDI controller. It's also going to capture how long that you hold that key down and when you release it. What we know as musicians as the attack and the release, the beginning of the note and the end of the note. Now, that duration or that time between when we play the note or press the key and release the note would be duration, which is where we're going to get rhythm from. So as that MIDI controller is capturing the on and the off of pressing the key and releasing the key, you're also capturing the duration or the rhythms that you're playing. The last thing that most modern MIDI controllers also capture today is what's known as velocity. So velocity is the speed or the force that the pad or the key is struck or played. So velocity is going to change the volume. Just like on an acoustic piano, the harder you hit the key, the louder the note comes out. If you're playing a wind instrument, the more air you put behind that initial attack, the louder the sound comes out. The softer your touch on the piano, the softer the sound. The softer the air that you're using on your wind instrument or the lighter that you're having the bow on the string is going to affect the volume. So again, in MIDI terms, this velocity is going to be measured on a scale from 0 to 127. The most forceful attack that the MIDI can record is at 127, and the very lightest touch it'll get all the way down to 0. That's the information, and that's really all the information that the MIDI keyboard is sending to the computer. Which pitch do you want it to play? When did the pitch start? When did the pitch end? And how forcefully or how lightly did you strike the key when you sent the information to the computer? That's it. Now, once that information is sent into your DAW, the DAW is going to assign the sound to it. So as you're sending these MIDI messages to the computer, all it is data. what number between a 0 and 127, which of those sounds do you want to come out? When did the sound start? When did it end? And what's the velocity? So if you're using, for example, say a drum kit, drum kits are usually going to be, the sounds for the drum kit are going to be found usually from C1 to C2 on the piano keyboard. Often it'll be maybe a few notes below C1. Sometimes it'll extend above C3, but most drum sets, particularly acoustic drum sets, aren't going to need more than 12, 16 sounds max. So your drum sounds are going to be found at C1, which is going to be the MIDI number 36, up to C2, which is going to be the MIDI number 49. 36 to 49 is where you're going to find most of your drum sounds if you're using a drum kit. If you're using a melodic instrument, piano, guitar, whatever that may be, you're going to be able to get that full range from C2 all the way up to C127. Even though if you go too far out of the range that would be considered the idiosyncratic range of the instrument, you are going to get some pretty interesting sounds. The other thing you can do in the DAW is shape how the sound comes out. You can add plugin effects like distortion effects or modulation effects or other things in the computer. But all of that stuff is going to be done in the DAW. All that MIDI controller did is send some very basic information to the computer, and then the DAW is going to take over from there. So for the next part of the video, I hope that you'll check it out, where we're going to dive in and actually take a look at how the 128 key MIDI keyboard is going to relate to the 88 key acoustic piano, as long with other iterations of different sizes of MIDI controllers, and how you can use that to create music and function within the DAW.